I've been married to my wife, Susan, for over 20 years. When we met, she was raising her daughter, Joanne, on her own, a curious little girl with a laugh that made the world brighter. The first time I saw them, Joanne was chasing a airplane, holding Susan's hand like it was her lifeline. Something clicked inside me in that moment. They were my future. Susan never hid the truth. Joanne's biological dad, Henry, was unreliable at best, showing up on birthdays with cheap presents, then disappearing for months. No matter how much he let her down, Joanne always lit up when he reappeared. When Susan and I got serious, she made it clear. Joanne came first. I was all in. What I didn't expect was how deeply I'd love her. It happened slowly, through every "I love you, Dad," every scribbled drawing, every late-night fever. I was there for her first bike ride, her school plays, and the wide tears when life felt too big. One memory stands out: her first recital. She was backstage, trembling, ready to bolt. I knelt beside her and whispered, "Find me in the crowd. I'll be right there." When the curtain rose, her eyes locked on mine, and she took a breath and found her voice. Henry? He was a ghost with big promises and zero follow-through. When Joanne cried over his no-shows, I was the one who held her. Years passed, and our bond grew unshakable, or so I thought. I was the one at her parent-teacher meetings, cheering from the stands, helping her choose her prom dress. She called me Dad, and I believed I'd earned that title. So when she announced her wedding, I pictured that moment, walking her down the aisle, a symbol of all we'd been through. I never said it, but I just assumed. Then the invitation arrived. Just a guest. No special mention. And Henry? He'd be walking her down the aisle. At first, I thought it was a mistake. When I asked her, her reply shattered me. "There's only one biological father," she said, like it was obvious. Like I was nothing. That wedding day, I sat quietly, just another face in the crowd. I watched Henry, the man who'd never shown up, lead Joanne down the aisle. No speeches, no thanks, not a single word acknowledging me. I left before dinner. Invisible in a suit I bought for the daughter who no longer saw me. Not even Susan asked where I went. Not that day. Not ever. Something inside me broke that day. The part of me that gave without question. The part that believed love and effort were enough. Joanne went on a lavish honeymoon, and when she got back, she called. Casual, like nothing had happened, gushing about beaches and candlelit dinners. Then came the real reason. They were short on money. Could I help? For the first time I said no. She was stunned. "But you've always helped," she said. "Maybe ask Henry," I told her. "He's your real dad, right?" Susan was furious. "How could you do that to her?" "It's not about the money," I said. "It's about respect." That conversation built a wall between us, a silence we'd never known. Joanne didn't reach out again, and honestly, the quiet felt like relief. Months passed, and the cracks in Joanne's perfect life appeared. Ethan lost his job. They couldn't make rent. Susan, of course, brought it to me, expecting me to swoop in like always. "She's Henry's daughter," I reminded her. "Let him step up." Susan called me heartless. Maybe I was. But cold is what I felt sitting at that wedding, erased from 20 years of love and sacrifice. Then, Ethan reached out. A desperate text. "Can we talk?" We met at a cafe. He danced around it at first, but we both knew why we were there. Money. It always came down to money. I listened. Then I said no, not out of spite, but because I had nothing left to give. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. We're 2 weeks from eviction. Ethan's voice was tight with stress, but I barely reacted. Before he could say more, I asked, "Did you try Henry?" Ethan blinked. "Henry? No. We thought..." Maybe you would. I gave a cold, humorless smile. Funny, because when Joanne had to pick someone, she picked Henry. You can't treat people like backup plans. I'm done being that guy. Ethan's frustration flared. That's not fair. We'll lose everything. I raised a hand. This talk is over. I hope things work out, but I'm not your safety net. I left Ethan at the table, his coffee cold, his problems his own. At home, Susan was waiting, arms crossed, eyes already full of judgment. She didn't ask. She knew. And her silence was louder than words. Since then, Joanne and Ethan gave up reaching out. But Susan? She still resents me. She doesn't say it, but I see it in her sighs, in the way she won't meet my eyes. To her, I'm the bad guy. Not because of money, but because I refused to save them. 6 months passed, and strangely I felt free. Free from being the fixer. I picked up old hobbies, reconnected with friends, things I forgot I enjoyed. Then the eviction happened. They ended up in Ethan's mom's cramped place. Susan was livid. This wouldn't have happened if you helped, she snapped. I didn't argue. She'll always see me as the villain. But deep down, I knew. I made the right call. Joanne made her choices. Now she's living with them. The real punchline? Henry, her golden father, never showed up. Not a dollar, not a phone call. Yet somehow he's still her hero. A week ago, Joanne finally reached out. Not for money, just to talk. I agreed. More curious than anything. We met at a park we used to visit when she was little. She fidgeted, stumbled through small talk, then finally said it. Dad, I'm sorry. I listened, but I couldn't pretend it fixed anything. You didn't just hurt me at the wedding, I said quietly. You spent years pretending I was second place. She looked down, shaken, maybe realizing it for the first time. When we said goodbye, she asked if we could rebuild. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because I honestly didn't know. I don't even know where to start. Or if I even deserve forgiveness. The truth is, Joanne didn't just break my heart. She shattered something deeper. My trust. And now, I've done something neither Susan nor Joanne will ever forgive me for. But I'm not even sure I should be asking for forgiveness anymore. It's been over a year since the wedding, the moment everything cracked open. My marriage to Susan has been crumbling ever since. What started as quiet distance became something colder, heavier, an empty space between us that neither of us could cross. The love, the trust, the respect we once had. It all faded, piece by piece. We still shared a house, but not a life. Since that day, there's been no intimacy, no warmth. At first, I told myself it was temporary, just the weight of stress. But it wasn't. The resentment in Susan's eyes told me the truth long before her words did. She blamed me for Joanne's suffering, and that blame became the undercurrent of our every interaction. The silence filled our nights. The distance filled our days. And every time I reached for her, she pulled further away. And in that silence, someone else stepped in. Monica, Susan's best friend, Joanne's fun aunt, the one who always had a smile, a story, a little too much wine, and the kind of laugh that filled a room. She had always been around, but after the wedding, she reached out more. At first, I thought she was trying to help patch things up between Susan and me. But over time, it became clear. She wasn't just there for Susan. She was there for me. Monica listened, really listened, when no one else did. She told me what no one else dared to, that my feelings mattered too, that I wasn't crazy for hurting, that it wasn't all my fault. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. One night, after hours of talking, we sat in silence, the kind that doesn't feel awkward, just heavy with everything unsaid. And then she took my hand. Her fingers were warm, steady, grounding me in a way I hadn't felt in years. You deserve to be happy, she said softly. and they're not letting you. I don't know if it was her voice, the weight of her words, or just the unbearable loneliness, but I leaned in, and so did she. I kissed her. She didn't pull away. That night, I didn't go home. For the first time in months, I felt something. Seen, wanted, understood. I know what we did was wrong, but I can't bring myself to regret it. Monica wasn't an escape. She was a reminder that I was still alive. Susan knew. Maybe not at first, but she knew. I could see it in the way her eyes followed me when I came home late, or how her jaw tensed every time my phone buzzed. She never asked, maybe because she already knew the answer. The silence between us sharpened into something brittle, something waiting to shatter. Monica carried guilt too, but neither of us could bring ourselves to stop. Because in that fragile, forbidden space, we found the pieces of ourselves we'd lost. It couldn't last, and it didn't. When Susan confronted me, she didn't ask for proof. She already knew. Her voice shook, but her words cut clean through me. "What is this?" she asked. "What's left of us?" I told her the truth. Because after everything, there was no point in lying. Monica and we've been seeing each other. Her face twisted, shock bleeding into fury, into heartbreak, into something beyond either of us. "So all of it meant nothing to you? All these years? Everything we built? Was it all just disposable?" I opened my mouth to explain. But what could I say? That I had been drowning, and Monica was the only one who threw me a lifeline. That I was so desperate to be seen, I stopped caring who saw me. "You shut me out," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I needed you, and you shut me out." "And that justifies this?" she shouted, her voice breaking. "You broke us." Before I could answer, Joanne appeared in the doorway, and the look in her eyes, cold, distant, told me she had already known too. "I thought you were better than this," she said. "Joanne, My voice cracked. "You never cared." She cut me off. "You just wanted to be the hero, and when you couldn't be, you burned it all down." I stood there, hollowed out by the weight of their words, with nothing left to say. By the end of the night, they told me to leave, to never contact them again. And as much as it hurt, there was also relief. There was nothing left to save. I moved into a small apartment, a bed, a couch, a kitchen too quiet for comfort. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The divorce was brutal, not because of lawyers or assets, but because of the silence that followed. The silence where a family used to be. Through it all, Monica stayed. Not as a solution, but as a witness. She didn't excuse what I'd done. She didn't tell me I was blameless, but she didn't walk away either. "You don't have to carry this alone," she said one night as we sat on my balcony, the city stretching out below us. "Don't I?" I asked, my voice thin. "I destroyed everything." She shook her head. "You didn't destroy everything. Things were broken long before us. You just stopped pretending." I wanted to believe her. Sometimes I almost did. Months passed. Slowly I rebuilt. The routines kept me breathing, work kept me distracted, and eventually, the silence became something I could live with. And then, a message. It was from Joanne. "Dad, I know I hurt you. I know I failed you. But you'll always be my father. I'm sorry. I know things will never be the same, but I'll always love you." I stared at the screen for a long time, unsure how to hold something so small that weighed so much. I didn't reply. Not right away. Some wounds take more than an apology to heal. Some things can't be undone, but maybe, just maybe, they can be rebuilt. I don't know if forgiveness will ever come, or if I even deserve it. But for now, I keep moving forward, even if I'm still haunted by everything I left behind.